Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Now, as we see here in this interesting article, Washington Post today, we have got Warren Buffett attacking the dollar. We've got Bill Gross attacking the dollar. Later in the article, they quote a guy called Darryl Jones of Hedgeye, who says the dollar has a long way to go. And, of course, George Soros says there used to be no risk in the dollar, but now there is a risk in the dollar. And my answer to all of these wonderful heroes of finance, oligarchy, and financial speculation, you guys are going to start paying a 1% turnover tax on your dealings. You want to use credit default swaps to speculate against the dollar? Guess what? We're going to ban naked credit default swaps the way Germany did 1 year ago next month, May 2010. Now, we've been featuring some reports from Dan Abramson down in Texas about the situation on the Tobin tax, the Wall Street sales tax, the turnover tax. So let's take this opportunity to go to Dan down there in Austin and see what he's come up with. Welcome, Dan.
I appreciate it, Webster. And as always, everyone can get more information, twitter.com/false-flag-news. Webster, I want to start. I'm going to get into the news on the derivatives tax. I just want to begin by mentioning something for the Austrians out there, the people who read Rothbard and von Hayek and believe that government is the enemy. Ron Paul, in an interview recently, said, at present, there are around $1 quadrillion in transactions per year, the vast majority of them from banking, foreign currency trading, interest rate swaps, and other derivatives, plus institutional stock, bond, and corporate real estate deals. And you know what he says? He said, so a fee of around 0.1% on corporate transactions should be enough to cover the bond and Social Security debt, plus the states can fill any shortfalls. And then he goes on to say that if it works out well, we could raise that number to 1%. A tax
Tremendous. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard, Ron Paul. And in fact, Webster, let me augment that by saying I was watching Dylan Radigan's show on MSNBC last week, and Joe Klein from Time Magazine, who's usually just a rather contemptible character, actually asked Ron Paul, what do you think of a derivatives tax? He said the word derivatives tax. And he said a tax on speculation. And Ron Paul said, I would be open to it. We could start it with options. So, he definitely did not poo-poo the idea. So before I get into the news, I just want to say to people, these derivatives are a creature of the Federal Reserve. There is nothing free market about them. This is oligopolies. This is monopolies. This is insider trading and front-running and fraud. There's nothing free market and wonderful about this. So when we're talking about taxing this, we're not taxing productive activity here. We're taxing parasitic speculation that leads to higher oil prices, higher food prices, and economic crashes. So let's get right into the news here. Webster, we had some bad news on the people's budget. That was last week a topic I brought up. It failed in the House. What's remarkable about the failure is that it only garnered 77 votes. We had 108 Democrats voting against it, including two of the best, Marcy Kaptur and Peter DeFazio. I've got calls into their office to try to figure out what exactly was behind that. I haven't heard back from either yet, but I'll keep you updated. Additionally, after the failure of that budget, the Congressional Black Caucus has come out with their own budget. The good news, there is a speculation tax of 1%. The bad news is it's not on derivatives, it's just on stocks. So the total amount of money they hope to raise by 2015, get this, $77 billion. By 2015. This is incredibly weak, and I think what it shows again is that there's a portion of the Democrat Party that's willing to engage on this issue, but not engage fully enough to realize the power of the derivatives tax. Because if you're only talking about a tax on stocks, but not options, not derivatives, you've basically neglected 90+% of the actual financial transactions that are happening. So again, I appreciate the Congressional Black Caucus bringing the issue forward. I wish they'd go further with it, and I want to encourage people. Webster, you used to say get active or get radioactive. Call your congressman. It's not a big deal. When I called Congresswoman Kaptur's office and DeFazio's office, they're really nice on the phone. It's not a big deal. They'll talk to you. Tell them you want a derivatives tax, because otherwise our alternative here is austerity and turning us into a banana republic. Some more news on derivatives. If you want to get active on an issue right now, if this is important to you, in the House right now, the two chairmen of the Financial Committee, of the Financial Services Committee, are trying to delay by 18 months the implementation of new federal controls on the over-the-counter derivatives market. So you may remember a character named Spencer Backus, who was the chairman of the committee, who said, I work for the banks. My job is to work for the banks. Well, now his job is to try to delay the already weak implementation of the SEC and CFTC rules by 18 months. The question is, will Obama stand up to him? Because this is obviously a creature of Wall Street. The Democrats need to make a stand here because it's clear the Republicans are trying to put off the already weak Dodd-Frank reforms. Let me mention another article here from the Wall Street.
Yeah, let me just ask you now, is this the provision that makes the over-the-counter derivatives reportable so you know how many there are?
Yeah, let me read you from the article. That's exactly right, Webster. Quote, the Dodd-Frank financial reform brings over-the-counter derivatives under federal control. It requires derivatives to go through clearinghouses and to trade on regulated exchanges as much as possible. Now, let me segue and answer your question with greater specificity. The lobbyists have now pumped in $27 million in the past 3 months to influence congressmen. What's happening now is at the same time, the SEC, this next week, actually coming up, starting on Monday, the SEC is drafting swap regulation rules that will define the following terms: swap, security-based, and security-based swap agreement. So we have the House trying to weaken this while the SEC gets ready to define exactly which swaps will have to be put through these clearinghouses. So next week is going to be very key. Now, if you want to talk to the SEC, there's a process called notice and comment. So if you go on their website and look up these derivatives rules, and I'll post this on my Twitter account, twitter.com/false-flag-news, you as a citizen have a right to speak out and say, we want these defined broadly. We want derivatives, over-the-counter derivatives, SIVs. We want these regulated, exchange-traded, and that is the first step to being able to tax them. It's difficult to tax these if these things are just between two banks. We need to get these transparent, and we need to get them out in the open. And so these are issues on which people can get politically active here. It's important not to just sit back. We need to get out there and push this stuff because, honestly, Wall Street and the money that they're putting in, $27 million in 3 months, if you don't get on the phone, this stuff will not happen. I just want to continue with a few more things here. I've got some articles I want to get through. There is a very interesting article. There's an antitrust criminal charge that's coming from the U.S. Department of Justice. This is from Forbes magazine. The U.S. Department of Justice's antitrust and anti-fraud divisions are investigating whether as many as 16 giant banks colluded to manipulate LIBOR, the London Interbank Offered Rate. There's a lot of speculation that this case has the potential to really explode and to bring these banks down. And so I want to tell people, get active, get onto these derivatives issues, because this is how we stop the austerity. This is how we stop the Wall Street demagoguery from looting the country. Thank you, Webster, for having me on.
Okay, we'll see you next week. Keep us up to date. Very good stuff this week, Dan. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Webster.
Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.